Welcome to your deep dive. Looks like someone's getting ready to tackle a big project. You've sent us a whole mountain of material on project management.
Quite a stack indeed.
But don't worry, expert speaker and I have sifted through it all, and we're ready to guide you through the most important points and maybe even unearth a few surprises along the way.
It's like we've brewed you a super concentrated espressos of project management knowledge, ready to take a sip.
Exactly. We'll start with the basics. What is project management, really? Why is it so important? And what can happen when it goes off the rails? Then we'll map out the entire project lifecycle, from that initial spark of an idea to the final sigh of relief when it's all done.
We won't just be throwing definitions at you. We'll get into the strategy behind each phase, how to sidestep those common pitfalls, and how to really harness the power of project management.
All right, let's kick things off with a story about a project that, well, didn't exactly go according to plan. Ever seen the Sydney Opera House?
Oh, absolutely. An architectural icon.
Beautiful, isn't it? But behind that beauty lies a pretty cautionary tale.
I think I know where this is going.
It was supposed to take 6 years to build, with a budget of $7 million. The reality: 16 years and over $106 million.
Ouch. That's a cost overrun of epic proportions.
It really is, and it highlights why planning is so crucial.
And not just any planning. We're talking strategic planning, deciding whether the project is even worth doing in the first place.
Right. Is it aligned with our goals? Do we have the resources to pull it off?
And then the tactical planning, figuring out the how, the nitty-gritty of actually getting it done.
So before you even lay a single brick or write a single line of code,
you need to ask those tough questions. Is this project realistic? Do we have the people, the budget, the time?
And will it actually help us achieve our overall strategic objectives?
Precisely. Both levels of planning are essential. Skipping them, well, that's like setting sail without a map or a compass. You might eventually reach land, but it'll be a long and bumpy ride.
And it's not just mega projects that need planning. Think about everyday life. Athletes have their training schedules. Actors rehearse their roles.
Even planning a grocery shopping trip can save you time and hassle in the store.
Exactly. Planning, in a way, is how we achieve anything, whether it's running a marathon, delivering a flawless performance, or just having all the ingredients for dinner.
Now, speaking of journeys, let's talk about the roadmap of a project.
Okay, so picture it like a map, with specific phases that guide us from start to finish.
The Project Management Institute, or PMI, they break it down into 5 key phases: initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and control, and closure.
5 phases like chapters in a book, each one building on the last, moving the project towards that finish line. So let's start at the very beginning. Initiation. Isn't this where the project sponsor takes center stage?
Absolutely. They're the ones who see the need for this project, the ones with the vision. They define the problem, the desired outcomes, the potential benefits.
They're the ones who light the fire, so to speak.
Exactly. And they set the initial budget and timeline, outlining the resources and any constraints we need to work within.
Like in the Lamborghini showroom example we have here, the head of marketing, they saw an opportunity to really shake things up, keep pace with competitors.
Capitalize on that buzz around the new retail park.
Right. That's their vision, their driving force.
And that's where the project manager comes in, right? Handpicked by the sponsor, they become the leader, the conductor of this whole project orchestra.
Leading the charge, making sure everyone's playing in tune and on time.
Exactly. But here's the interesting part. Not every project makes it past this initial phase.
Really? So even with a brilliant idea and a passionate sponsor, a project can get axed before it even begins.
It happens. Feasibility, resources, strategic alignment, all of that comes into play. Is it realistic? Do we have the people, the budget, the time? And most importantly, does it fit into the organization's bigger goals?
Sometimes a great idea just isn't the right fit at the right time.
Precisely. Better to realize that early on than pour time and energy into something that's not going to fly.
So let's say our Lamborghini showroom project gets the green light. What's next? Planning.
You got it. And this is where the project manager really steps into the spotlight. Planning isn't just about making a to-do list. It's about thinking strategically, anticipating challenges, creating solutions before they even become problems.
It's like they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. A good project manager asks the right questions from the get-go. What needs to be done? How long will it take? Who's doing what? What could possibly go wrong? And sometimes those questions can uncover unexpected complexities.
Like in that example from the materials, estimating the time to recruit staff for the showroom.
Seems straightforward on the surface.
Right. But digging deeper, the project manager realized it wasn't so simple. It depended on a whole chain of other things.
Dependencies, like having the IT infrastructure ready to go,
Finalized HR policies for new hires, even having the training materials prepped.
pulling on one thread and realizing it unravels a whole sweater.
It makes you realize you have to look beyond the surface. Consider all the ripple effects.
And that's why, as PMI emphasizes, Planning is an iterative process.
Iterative. So you're constantly learning, refining, adapting the plan as you go.
Exactly, like fine-tuning a musical instrument, making sure every element is in harmony. Okay, let's break down those key components of planning, shall we? First up, scope.
Scope. That's all about defining the boundaries of the project, right? What are we doing and what are we not doing?
Exactly. Setting clear expectations, preventing the project from ballooning out of control.
So it's like drawing a line in the sand. This is what we're committing to. Anything beyond this needs to be carefully evaluated.
Exactly. And a well-defined scope statement acts as a shield for the project manager, protecting them against, unrealistic demands and scope creep, which can really derail even the most well-intentioned projects. And we have to distinguish between product scope and project scope too.
Okay, now I'm curious. What's the difference?
Product scope. Think about the features and functions of the final product. What does it look like? What does it do? Like with the Lamborghini showroom, the product scope would include things like the building design, the types of cars on display.
Oh, and those cool augmented reality features they were planning?
Right, even the staff training program. It's all about the tangible elements, the end result.
Okay, so project scope is a bit broader then.
You've got it. Project scope encompasses all the work involved in delivering that final product. It's about the journey, not just the destination.
I see. So for the showroom, this would include things like getting permits.
Hiring contractors, building the actual structure, installing lighting, setting up the AR tech, you name it. It's everything behind the scenes that brings the product to life.
It's like seeing that beautifully plated dish in a restaurant.
And understanding the entire recipe, the chef's expertise, the whole process that went into creating it.
Exactly. And without a clear understanding of both product and project scope.
You're setting yourself up for confusion, miscommunication, and potentially project failure.
And I think that story in the materials, the one about the street renovation request, really highlights this.
Oh yes, the classic scope creep scenario. The residents near the showroom, they wanted the company to renovate their street as part of the project.
Which on the surface might seem like a nice PR move, but
Completely outside the defined scope.
exactly. And if the project manager isn't careful, those seemingly small additions can snowball into major delays, budget blowouts.
And a whole lot of stress.
So that initial scope statement is like a shield, keeping everyone focused on the agreed upon goals.
Exactly. Without it, you're essentially building a house without blueprints. And that rarely ends well.
Scope check. But what about timelines? How do you figure out when things should happen, how long each step will take?
Ah yes, timelines. This is where we map out the project schedule. The detailed roadmap from that first task to the final deliverable. And it's a lot more than just slapping dates on a calendar.
It's about understanding the sequence of events, the dependencies, the flow of the whole project.
Exactly. Creating a realistic timeline, one that takes those potential roadblocks into account, and allows for some flexibility.
And to create that timeline, you use certain tools, right?
Right, the work breakdown structure, for example, it helps us break the project into manageable chunks, like chapters in a book.
So you're taking this big, maybe overwhelming project and dividing it into smaller, more digestible pieces.
Precisely. Then we create the activity list, identifying every specific task that needs to happen.
Then you figure out how long each task will take, who's responsible, and what other tasks it might depend on. Because some tasks have prerequisites, right?
Of course, you can't build the walls before the foundation is laid, right?
Exactly.
So identifying those dependencies is crucial. And this helps us determine the critical path, the sequence of tasks that dictates the shortest possible project duration. It's like the backbone of the timeline. Any delay there will push back the entire project.
So the project manager has to keep a close eye on those critical path tasks.
Absolutely, making sure they stay on schedule. But what happens when the unexpected pops up? A key team member gets sick, materials are delayed.
That's where those buffers come in, right?
Exactly. A good project manager anticipates those potential delays and builds in some wiggle room, adding extra time to the schedule. But you have to be strategic about it. You don't want to add unnecessary time to every single task.
So it's about assessing the risks, prioritizing those critical tasks, being realistic about the potential for things to go awry.
Creating a timeline that's both ambitious and achievable. And to help us visualize all of this, we use a tool called the Gantt chart.
The Gantt chart, it's like a visual representation of the whole timeline, right? You can see all the tasks, their durations, dependencies, the critical path.
It's like a project manager's cheat sheet. Helps them see the big picture and track progress.
And communicate that progress to stakeholders, right?
Exactly. It's an invaluable tool for keeping everyone on the same page. Okay, so we've talked scope, timelines. But projects also need resources, materials, and of course money.
Ah, yes, budgeting, putting on our financial hats.
Exactly. Figuring out how much this whole endeavor is going to cost. And this is more than just coming up with a single number. It's about carefully identifying all those cost-generating activities, estimating those costs accurately, and securing the necessary funds.
Getting a detailed financial roadmap.
You got it. But it's not just about adding up the cost of materials. You have to factor in labor, equipment rentals, permits, travel, consultant fees.
It can feel like there are hidden costs everywhere you turn.
Right. It's easy to overlook things like management time or software licenses. Those can really add up.
So how do you make sure you're capturing all those potential costs and building a realistic budget?
There are a few approaches. Bottom-up budgeting, where you break down the project into each tiny task and estimate the cost of each one. Or top-down budgeting, where you start with a fixed budget and allocate funds to different areas.
And no matter which approach you choose, it's crucial to track your actual spending throughout the project. Make sure you're not overspending, that you're staying on track financially.
Exactly. Monitoring spending helps you spot those potentially overruns early and take action before it's too late.
Okay, so budgeting is about more than just crunching numbers. It's about planning, tracking, and making smart decisions to ensure the project stays within its financial boundaries.
Precisely. Now let's talk about something that's often overlooked but absolutely essential. Quality.
We all want a high-quality product or service, but how do you define quality in the context of a project? What does it actually mean?
Quality is about making sure the project delivers what it promised, that the final product is not just functional, but also reliable, durable, and meets the needs and expectations of the stakeholders.
So it's about exceeding expectations, creating something truly valuable. But how do you build quality into a project? Can you just sprinkle it on at the end?
Not at all. Quality has to be baked in from the very beginning. Checks and balances throughout the entire project lifecycle. Think of it like cooking a lasagna.
Okay, I'm intrigued. I love a good lasagna analogy.
You start with those quality ingredients, right? Making sure your pasta is cooked just right, your sauce is flavorful, the cheese is melty. That's like checking your inputs, making sure the foundation of your project is solid.
So for the Lamborghini showroom, that would be like inspecting the building materials, reviewing the staff training program.
Taking those augmented reality features to make sure they're up to par. Exactly. Then, as you assemble the lasagna, you check each layer. Is it spread evenly? Is the seasoning right? These are like your process checks, making sure the work is being done correctly and efficiently.
So in the showroom context, this would mean having regular site inspections, having the marketing team review the promotional materials.
Testing how the AR features are integrated with the showroom systems, right? And finally, you taste the lasagna before you serve it, right?
Of course.
Making sure the flavors blend well, the overall experience is delightful. These are like your output checks, making sure the final deliverable is what it should be.
So for the showroom, this could mean a final walkthrough to ensure everything is functional and aesthetically pleasing.
Having a focus group test those AR features, analyzing that initial customer feedback. Exactly. And if you spot any problems during these checks, you can make adjustments along the way. It's about constantly striving for excellence.
Being proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. And keep in mind, quality also impacts those other constraints we talked about: time, cost, and scope.
They're all interconnected.
Absolutely. Higher quality might require more time or resources. If you're on a tight deadline or a shoestring budget, you might need to make some compromises on quality.
It's like choosing between buying a ready-made cake and baking one from scratch. Homemade takes more time and effort.
But it might be tastier and more personalized.
Exactly. It's about understanding those trade-offs.
And that's where the project manager's expertise shines. Balancing those priorities, managing expectations, making sure the final product delivers within those given constraints.
So it's about finding that sweet spot. Quality, time, cost, scope. It's a balancing act for sure.
It is. And speaking of potential challenges, let's move on to risk management. Putting on our detective hats now.
Because no matter how well you plan, there are always those what-ifs. Unforeseen circumstances, obstacles.
Risk management is all about identifying those potential problems, assessing their likelihood, and developing strategies to either prevent them or minimize their impact.
It's about being prepared, having a plan B, being able to adapt.
Precisely. And it's a continuous process throughout the entire project. So we start by identifying those potential risks, brainstorming, interviewing stakeholders, looking at data from similar projects.
Tapping into the collective wisdom of the team, anticipating potential pitfalls.
Exactly. Once we've identified the risks, we assess them. How likely are they? How bad would the impact be? We might use a risk matrix to visualize this, categorizing risks as high, medium, or low priority.
So you're prioritizing those risks, focusing your energy on the ones that pose the biggest threat to the project.
Right. And for each risk, we develop a response plan. What steps will we take to prevent it, or to minimize the damage if it does happen?
So it's like having a toolbox of solutions ready to deploy if needed.
Exactly. We can try to avoid the risk altogether, maybe change the scope or choose a different vendor. We can mitigate the risk, try to reduce its likelihood or impact.
Or even transfer the risk, like purchasing insurance or outsourcing a particularly risky part of the project.
Exactly. And even with the most thorough risk management plan, things change, new risks pop up, existing ones evolve.
You have to stay vigilant, keep adapting.
Exactly. Okay, moving on to another critical element, expectations management. Because a brilliantly executed project can still fail if the stakeholders aren't happy.
Because at the end of the day, projects are all about people, right? Meeting their needs, exceeding their expectations.
Absolutely. Expectations management is about making sure everyone's on the same page.
Everyone understands what success looks like.
Exactly. What we're trying to achieve, what their roles are, what the timeline and budget look like.
Because misaligned expectations can lead to conflict, disappointment, even project failure.
You got it. Remember that example in the materials about the Lamborghini showroom?
Oh yeah, the stakeholders had different visions for the space. Some wanted a family-friendly showroom with sedans and SUVs.
Others wanted a high-end boutique for sports cars.
Those conflicting expectations could have led to some serious disagreements about the design, the marketing, even the types of cars on display.
Imagine planning a family vacation without everyone agreeing on what they want to do.
Chaos. So how do you prevent those expectation gaps from forming?
It all comes down to communication. Open and honest dialogue with all the stakeholders. The project manager needs to be a skilled communicator, gathering input, understanding needs, and addressing concerns proactively.
Being a good listener, being transparent and upfront about the project's goals, the constraints, the potential challenges.
Exactly. And it's not just talking, you need to document those expectations in an expectations management plan or as part of the project charter. This creates that shared understanding.
And this is an ongoing process, right? You need to keep those lines of communication open throughout the project, keeping stakeholders informed, managing those expectations as things change.
Exactly. It's about building trust, fostering collaboration, and ensuring that everyone is rowing in the same direction.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about communication. It seems like the thread that weaves through every aspect of project management.
You're absolutely right. Communication is the lifeblood of any project. How we share information, make decisions, track progress, build relationships, achieve success.
It's more than just emails and meetings, though, right?
It's about creating a culture of open communication, where people feel comfortable sharing ideas, asking questions, raising concerns.
It's about being intentional and respectful with communication, choosing the right methods for each situation, making sure the information is accurate, timely, and relevant.
Precisely. And the project manager plays a key role in facilitating all of this, setting up those communication protocols, holding regular meetings, distributing those status reports.
And leading those meetings effectively, creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable contributing.
Exactly. That involves having a clear agenda, setting ground rules, ensuring that everyone has a chance to speak their mind. Okay, so we've laid the groundwork for planning, from scope and timelines to budgeting and communication.
It's clear that planning is the foundation for success, but what happens once that plan is in place? What's the next step in our project journey?
Time to shift gear from planning to action. We enter the execution phase, where the project team starts bringing the plan to life.
The rubber meets the road.
Exactly. And just like a well-rehearsed orchestra, we need everyone to play their part in harmony. But even with the most detailed plan, things don't always go smoothly. There will be unexpected twists and turns along the way.
So how do you keep the project on course? How do you navigate those bumps in the road?
That's where the monitoring and control phase comes in. Running alongside execution, it acts as a constant feedback loop, making sure we're staying on track and adjusting to those changes as they happen.
It's like having a GPS system for your project, right? Constantly checking your location, recalculating the route if you hit a detour.
Precisely. And the project manager will use a variety of tools to keep a pulse on the project's progress. One valuable tool is the RAID log.
The RAID log, it's like a centralized hub for all the important project information, right?
Exactly. Risks, actions, issues, dependencies, and decisions. It keeps everything organized, helps us stay on top of things.
Like a project manager's journal, capturing all the key events and decisions. And speaking of challenges, remember that unexpected budget issue that popped up during the Lamborghini showroom project?
Ah, yes, a perfect example of the RAID log in action. During construction, the cost of a certain type of lighting fixture skyrocketed.
Which could have thrown the whole budget off track.
But the project manager, they were diligently tracking cost and risks in the RAID log. They spotted the issue early on and were able to take action.
So they were able to stay proactive, find alternative solutions, and keep the project moving forward. And monitoring isn't just about catching problems, it's also about spotting opportunities for improvement, right?
Absolutely. The project manager should always be looking for ways to optimize processes, enhance efficiency, improve quality.
So they're not just a detective, but also an inventor, always looking for ways to make things better.
Exactly. And communication is key throughout all of this, keeping stakeholders informed, addressing concerns, managing those expectations.
Transparency, collaboration, building trust, and celebrating successes.
Of course. Now, let's fast forward to the final stage of our project journey. Closure. What happens when we reach the finish line? Closure is about officially wrapping up the project, handing over the deliverables, documenting lessons learned.
Tied up loose ends, celebrating achievements, and documenting lessons learned is an important part of this, right?
Absolutely. Reflecting on what went well, what could have been done better, and what we can carry forward to future projects. It's all about continuous improvement.
So it's not just about the end. It's about capturing those insights and ensuring we continue to grow and evolve as project managers.
Precisely. Closure is also a time to recognize the team, celebrate their hard work, and acknowledge their contribution to the success.
A time for reflection, celebration, and gratitude. The final chapter of this project, but also the beginning of a new one as we carry those lessons forward. Now, before we move on, let's talk about a project management approach that's gaining a lot of traction these days: Agile project management.
Agile. It's like a breath of fresh air, a more flexible and iterative approach, especially well-suited for projects with lots of uncertainty, like software development or marketing campaigns.
Because in today's world, things change so quickly. Customer needs evolve, technology advances. Those traditional waterfall methods can feel a bit rigid.
Exactly. Agile is all about embracing change. It's about collaboration, adaptability, and continuous improvement, delivering value to the customer quickly and in those small iterative chunks.
So instead of waiting until the very end to reveal the finished product, you're constantly delivering working pieces, getting feedback along the way.
It's like building a house brick by brick, getting feedback on each layer as you go, rather than trying to construct the entire house in one go.
And one of the key concepts in Agile is that minimum viable product, the MVP.
Right, the simplest version of the product that you can release to users and get that early feedback.
Embracing that fail fast, learn fast mentality.
Exactly. And one of the most popular Agile methodologies is Scrum, a framework for managing and completing those complex projects in an iterative and incremental way.
I've definitely heard of Scrum, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on the details.
Well, Scrum is like a well-oiled machine, clearly defined roles, events, and artifacts that help teams work together effectively. It's based on breaking the project down into smaller iterations called sprints, usually about 2 weeks long. Each sprint focuses on delivering a potentially shippable product increment, and the team reflects and adapts at the end of each sprint.
So breaking down that big, daunting project into smaller, manageable chunks, getting feedback, continuously improving the process.
Embracing change and collaboration rather than sticking rigidly to a plan that might become outdated. Scrum is a powerful tool for navigating today's project landscape, and it can be applied to a wide range of projects, not just software.
A valuable addition to the project management toolbox. We'll definitely dive deeper into Scrum a little later. But for now, let's take a breath and recap what we've learned about project management fundamentals. From that cautionary tale of the Sydney Opera House to the importance of planning, communication, monitoring, and control.
We've covered a lot of ground.
And we've learned that project management is more than just following rules or using fancy tools.
It's about people, collaboration, and that shared pursuit of a goal.
Leadership, creativity, problem solving, and a whole lot of adaptability, creating something truly valuable, whether it's a building, a software application, or a successful marketing campaign.
Project management is a dynamic and challenging field, but it's also incredibly rewarding. And with the right knowledge, skills, and mindset, you can achieve amazing things. Now, are you ready to dive deeper into that world of Agile and Scrum?
Absolutely. I'm eager to learn how these approaches can help us navigate those complexities and deliver exceptional results.
Then let's jump right in.
All right, so we've laid a solid foundation with those project management fundamentals. But now, let's roll up our sleeves and delve into the nitty-gritty of actually managing a project in flight.
Because let's face it, even the most meticulously crafted plan can encounter turbulence when it meets the real world. That's where a project manager's ability to adapt and make real-time decisions becomes crucial.
It's like the difference between planning a road trip and actually hitting the road. You might have the perfect route mapped out, but you have to be prepared for unexpected detours, traffic jams, and maybe even the occasional flat tire.
Precisely. And just like a seasoned road tripper packs a spare tire and a toolbox, a good project manager equips themselves with tools and techniques to navigate those unexpected bumps along the way. One of those essential tools is the project diary, sometimes called the project action log.
Okay, the project diary, it's like a captain's log, right? A place to record all the important events, decisions, and actions that occur throughout the project voyage.
Exactly. It's a centralized hub where you document everything changes to the plan, new information that arises, decisions made during meetings, and any roadblocks or issues that pop up.
So, for example, if a stakeholder requests a change to the scope, or if a task is delayed due to unforeseen circumstances, the project manager would note all those details in the project diary.
Absolutely. It becomes a single source of truth for the project, ensuring that nothing slips through the cracks. But the project diary isn't just about passively recording events. It's also about actively managing commitments.
Commitments, you mean like promises made by team members or stakeholders to deliver specific tasks by certain deadlines?
Exactly. Whenever someone agrees to do something, the project manager should log that commitment in the diary, along with the person responsible and the deadline. This helps hold people accountable and allows the project manager to track progress and identify potential bottlenecks early on.
It's like having a gentle reminder system that helps keep everyone on track and ensures that those crucial tasks don't fall behind. And speaking of keeping people in the loop, how do you keep stakeholders informed without overwhelming them with all those day-to-day details in the project diary?
That's where the art of communication comes in. We rely on tools like status reports and stakeholder meetings to provide high-level updates on the project's progress, focusing on key achievements, challenges, and risks.
So it's about tailoring the communication to the needs of the audience. Stakeholders want to know the big picture, the overall health of the project, and whether it's on track to achieve its goals. They don't necessarily need to get bogged down in the minutiae of each individual task.
Precisely. It's about striking a balance between providing enough detail to be informative without overwhelming them with information overload. And there are a few key elements that should be included in any status report or stakeholder meeting.
Like an overview of the project's progress, right? Clearly indicating whether the project is on the track, facing some challenges, or potentially veering off course.
Exactly. You want to give them a quick and clear sense of the overall health of the project. And one effective way to do that is by using a simple color-coded system, like red, amber, green.
Ah, the traffic light system. Green means everything's running smoothly, amber signals some potential bumps in the road, and red indicates that there are serious issues that require immediate attention.
Exactly. It's a visual shorthand that allows stakeholders to quickly grasp the project's status without having to wade through pages of text.
And it's also important to highlight key achievements, right? Celebrating milestones that have been met, deliverables that have been completed, and any successes that demonstrate the project's progress.
Absolutely. It's not just about reporting problems. It's also about recognizing the hard work of the team and showcasing the value the project is delivering. And of course, you'll also need to address any challenges or risks that have emerged.
Those inevitable bumps in the road that we talked about earlier, being transparent about potential problems and outlining the steps you're taking to address them builds trust and confidence with stakeholders.
Precisely. And remember, these status reports and stakeholder meetings aren't just one-way communication channels. They're also opportunities to get feedback and input from stakeholders, ensuring that the project remains aligned with their needs and expectations.
It's about fostering a collaborative environment where everything feels comfortable sharing their thoughts, ideas, and concerns. Now, let's zoom in on a crucial aspect of project management: scheduling. How do you go about creating a realistic timeline that takes into account all those interdependencies between tasks and potential delays?
That's where understanding the concept of dependencies comes in. Just like a carefully choreographed dance, tasks in a project often rely on each other, creating a delicate web of interconnections.
It's like a chain reaction, right? You can't start decorating a cake until it's baked, and you can't bake the cake until you've mixed the batter.
A perfect analogy. And in project management, we categorize dependencies into four main types: logical, resource, external, and discretionary.
Okay, let's break those down. Logical dependencies are those where one task simply can't begin until another one is finished, right? Like you can't install the roof of a house until the walls are built.
Exactly. Resource dependencies occur when you have limited resources, such as specific team members with unique skills or specialized equipment, and you need to sequence tasks based on the availability of those resources.
So if you only have one graphic designer on the team, you can't have them working on two different marketing materials simultaneously.
Precisely. External dependencies are those that involve factors outside the project team's control, like waiting for permits from government agencies or approvals from clients.
And discretionary dependencies are those that are more flexible based on best practices or the project manager's judgment, right? Like deciding to have the marketing team review a design before it's finalized.
Exactly. Understanding these dependencies is crucial for creating a realistic and achievable schedule. And once you've mapped out those dependencies, you can identify the critical path.
Ah, yes, the critical path. We touched on this earlier. It's that sequence of tasks that determines the shortest possible duration of the project.
Precisely. It's like the backbone of the project schedule. Any delay on the critical path will directly impact the project's completion date. That's why project managers use a technique called the critical path method to identify and manage this crucial sequence of tasks.
So it's like a detective carefully piecing together clues to solve a mystery, but in this case, the mystery is how to deliver the project on time.
A great analogy. The critical path method uses a visual diagram, a bit like a flowchart, to map out all the tasks, their dependencies, and their durations. This helps the project manager visualize the flow of work, identify potential bottlenecks, and make informed decisions about resource allocation and task prioritization.
So you can literally see which tasks have the most impact on the project's timeline and focus your attention on keeping those tasks on schedule. But even with meticulous planning, unexpected delays can still happen. How do you build some flexibility into the schedule to accommodate those inevitable bumps in the road?
That's where the concept of float comes in handy. Float, sometimes called slack, is the amount of time a task can be delayed without pushing back the project's completion date.
So it's like having a little bit of breathing room, a cushion of time that allows for some wiggle room if a task takes longer than expected or if an unexpected issue arises.
Exactly. Tasks on the critical path have zero float, meaning any delay will directly impact the project's finish line. But tasks that aren't on the critical path have some degree of float, allowing for a bit more flexibility.
Okay, that makes sense. But how do you actually go about estimating the duration of each task in the first place? It seems like a bit of a guessing game, especially for tasks you've never done before.
You're right. Estimating task durations can be one of the trickiest aspects of project management. But there are a few techniques that can help you arrive at more accurate and realistic estimates.
Like expert judgment, right? Tapping into the knowledge and experience of team members who have done similar tasks before.
Exactly. If you have team members who have a proven track record of accurate estimations, their insights can be invaluable. But it's important to be aware of potential biases, like the planning fallacy, where people tend to underestimate how long things will take.
It's like that familiar feeling of thinking you can clean your entire house in an hour, only to realize it takes 3 times as long and you're still finding dust bunnies under the couch.
Precisely. That's why it's wise to use a variety of estimating techniques, not just rely on expert judgment. Another useful technique is analogous estimating, where you look back at similar tasks from previous projects and use those historical durations as a baseline for your new estimates.
So if you've organized a similar event before, you might look at how long it took to secure the venue, design the invitations, and coordinate catering, and use those durations as a starting point for your new event.
Exactly. And another technique is parametric estimating, which involves using a statistical relationship between historical data and task variables to come up with more data-driven estimates.
So if you know that it takes an average of 2 hours to write a blog post of a certain length, and you know how many blog posts you need to write for your marketing campaign, you can use that information to estimate the total time required for the writing phase.
Precisely. And there are also software tools that can assist with estimating using algorithms and historical data to generate estimates based on task characteristics, complexity, and resource availability.
So it's about using a combination of human expertise, historical data, and technological tools to come up with the most accurate and realistic estimates possible.
Exactly. And no matter which techniques you use, it's always a good idea to build in some contingency time, adding extra time to the schedule to account for those inevitable, unexpected delays or challenges.
Which brings us to the concept of buffers, right? Those strategic cushions of time that help absorb shocks and keep the project on track.
Exactly. Buffers are essential for creating a robust schedule that can withstand the realities of project execution. But adding buffers isn't about being pessimistic or expecting things to go wrong. It's about being pragmatic and acknowledging that unforeseen circumstances can arise, and it's better to be prepared than to be caught off guard.
It's like packing an extra snack in your bag when you're going on a hike. You might not need it, but it's better to have it just in case you get hungry or your hike takes longer than expected. And there's no magic formula for determining how much buffer to add, right?
You're right. It depends on the nature of the project, the level of uncertainty, the complexity of the tasks, and the criticality of the deadlines. A good project manager will use their judgment and experience to determine the appropriate amount of buffer for each task and for the overall project.
And you have to be strategic about where you place those buffers, right? Adding buffer to every single task can create an overly long and unrealistic schedule.
Exactly. You want to focus on adding buffers to tasks that are on the critical path, tasks that have a high degree of uncertainty, or tasks that are particularly complex or challenging. You might also choose to add an overall project buffer at the end of the schedule to account for any unforeseen delays that might impact the entire project.
So it's about using buffers wisely and strategically to create a schedule that's both realistic and achievable.
Precisely. Now, once you've created this detailed schedule, how do you visualize it and communicate it to stakeholders in a way that's clear, concise, and easy to understand?
That's where the Gantt chart comes in, right? It's like a visual roadmap for the project showing all the tasks, their durations and dependencies, and the all-important critical path.
Exactly. The Gantt chart is an incredibly powerful tool for communication and progress tracking. It allows stakeholders to quickly grasp the overall schedule, see how the tasks fit together, and track progress at a glance.
And it's dynamic, right? You can update the Gantt chart as the project progresses, marking tasks as complete, adjusting timelines as needed, and visually representing any changes to the schedule.
Absolutely. Most project management software packages include Gantt chart functionality, making it easy to create, update, and share these charts with stakeholders.
So it's a must-have tool for any project manager who wants to stay organized, manage the schedule effectively, and keep everyone in the loop. But what about those big picture milestones, those key events that mark significant progress or achievements in the project? How do you track and communicate those to stakeholders?
That's where the milestone table comes in handy. It's like a distilled version of the Gantt chart, focusing on those key deliverables, milestones, and decision points that mark the project's progress.
So it's a way to communicate the project's roadmap at a higher level, providing stakeholders with a clear understanding of the key milestones and their target dates without overwhelming them with the details of every single task.
Precisely. It's particularly useful for communicating with senior management and other stakeholders who might not be involved in the day-to-day details of the project, but who need to be aware of the project's overall progress and key achievements.
And like the Gantt chart, the milestone table can be updated as the project progresses, showing the actual completion dates of milestones and providing a visual representation of the project's progress against the plan.
Exactly. It's another valuable tool for monitoring and controlling the project and keeping stakeholders informed and engaged.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground with scheduling, from mapping out dependencies and identifying the critical path to using the Gantt chart and the milestone table to visualize and communicate the project's progress. But what about ensuring that the work we're doing is actually meeting the required standards?
That brings us to the crucial aspect of quality management. It's not enough to just get things done. We need to get them done right.
Because delivering a product or service that's riddled with errors, defects, or inconsistencies can damage the project's reputation, erode customer trust, and ultimately lead to project failure.
Precisely. Quality management is about ensuring that the project deliverables meet the defined standards and fulfill the project's quality goals. And it starts with quality planning, where you define those quality standards and requirements up front.
So it's about setting the bar high from the beginning and ensuring that everyone involved in the project understands what those quality expectations are.
Exactly. And it's not just about setting vague quality goals. You need to think about how you're going to measure quality, what metrics you'll use to determine whether the deliverables meet the required standards.
So you might use things like defect rates, customer satisfaction surveys, performance benchmarks, or even expert evaluations, depending on the nature of the project and the deliverables.
Precisely. And quality management isn't just about checking things at the end. You need to build quality control activities into the project plan, integrating them into the workflow to ensure that quality is monitored and maintained throughout the project lifecycle.
So it's not just about hoping for the best and then scrambling to fix problems at the end. It's about building quality into the process from the very beginning.
Exactly. And remember those input checks, process checks, and output checks we talked about earlier. They play a crucial role in quality management.
Right. The input checks ensure that the materials, resources, and information used in the project meet the required standards. The process checks ensure that the work is being done correctly and efficiently, following established procedures and best practices. And the output checks ensure that the final deliverables meet the defined quality standards.
Precisely. And quality control isn't just about finding and fixing defects. It's also about preventing defects from happening in the first place.
So it's about creating a culture of quality within the project team where everyone understands the importance of quality and is empowered to identify and address potential issues before they become major problems.
Exactly. It's about fostering a mindset of continuous improvement, where everyone is striving for excellence and taking pride in delivering high-quality work.
Now, even with the most robust quality management processes, unexpected challenges can still arise. That's where risk management comes into play, right? It's about identifying and mitigating those potential problems that could throw the project off course.
Absolutely. Risk management is like having a safety net for your project, helping you anticipate potential pitfalls and prepare for the unexpected. And it involves 4 key steps: identification, assessment, response planning, and monitoring and control.
So the first step is to identify those potential risks, right? To put on your detective hat and think about all the things that could go wrong.
Exactly. And there are several techniques you can use for this, such as brainstorming sessions with the project team, interviews with stakeholders, reviewing historical data from similar projects, and analyzing the project plan for potential vulnerabilities.
It's about being proactive and anticipating potential problems rather than waiting for them to rear their ugly heads and derail the project. And once you've identified those potential risks, you need to assess them, right? Determine how likely they are to occur and what the potential impact would be if they did.
Precisely. We often use a tool called a risk matrix to visually represent the likelihood and impact of each risk. This helps us prioritize risks, focusing our attention on those that pose the greatest threat to the project's success.
So you're essentially categorizing the risks, ranking them from low priority to high priority, and focusing your energy on developing response plans for those high priority risks that could have a significant impact on the project's goals.
Exactly. And for each risk, we develop a response plan outlining the actions we'll take to either prevent the risk from happening or to minimize its impact if it does occur.
So it's like having a playbook of strategies ready to deploy if a particular risk materializes. And there are different approaches to responding to risks, right?
Absolutely. We can try to avoid the risk altogether, perhaps by choosing a different vendor or changing the project scope. We can mitigate the risk, reducing its likelihood or impact through preventative measures. We can transfer the risk perhaps by purchasing insurance or outsourcing a risky component of the project. Or we can accept the risk if it's low priority and the cost of responding outweighs the potential benefit.
It's like having a toolkit full of different options, and a skilled project manager knows which tool to use in each situation.
Exactly. And risk management isn't a one-time activity. It's an ongoing process that continues throughout the entire project lifecycle. You need to regularly monitor the status of risks, update the risk register as new information becomes available, and adjust your response plans as needed.
It's about being vigilant, adaptable, and proactive in managing those potential threats to the project's success. Now, let's circle back to Agile project management. We talked about it briefly earlier, but I'm eager to delve deeper into how this approach differs from traditional waterfall methods and what makes it so effective in today's dynamic world.
Agile is like a nimble sailboat navigating a constantly changing sea, whereas traditional waterfall is more like a large cargo ship with a fixed course. Both have their strengths, but in today's world, where change is the only constant, agility is becoming increasingly important.
So Agile is all about embracing change, being flexible, and adapting to new information and evolving customer needs. It's about iterative development, frequent feedback loops, and collaborative decision-making.
Precisely. Agile breaks down projects into smaller, more manageable iterations called sprints, typically 2 weeks in length. Each sprint focuses on delivering a potentially shippable product increment, providing value to the customer quickly and iteratively.
So instead of waiting until the end of the project to deliver a finished product, Agile teams deliver working increments of the product throughout the development process, gathering feedback along the way and incorporating that feedback into subsequent iterations.
Exactly. This iterative approach allows Agile teams to be more responsive to changing requirements, embrace new information, and deliver products that meet the evolving needs of customers. And one of the most popular Agile methodologies is Scrum, which provides a structured framework for managing and completing complex projects in an agile way.
I've heard Scrum mentioned a lot, but I'm still a bit fuzzy on the details. Can you shed some light on it?
Absolutely. Scrum is built on a set of principles and practices designed to promote collaboration, transparency, and continuous improvement. It relies on a clearly defined set of roles, egens, and artifacts to guide the work and keep the team aligned.
Okay, let's break those down. First, the roles. I know you've mentioned the product owner, the Scrum Master, and the development team. Can you remind me what each role entails?
Of course. The product owner acts as the voice of the customer, representing the stakeholders' needs and priorities. They're responsible for defining and managing the product backlog, which is a prioritized list of features and requirements for the product.
So they're the ones who set the vision for the product and ensure that the development team is building something that meets the customer's expectations.
Exactly. The Scrum Master is like a facilitator, a coach, and a protector of the Scrum process. They help the team understand and follow Scrum principles and practices, remove impediments that are blocking the team's progress, and create an environment where the team can thrive.
So they're not just managing tasks, they're managing the team's dynamics, communication, and overall effectiveness.
Precisely. And finally, we have the development team, which is a self-organizing, cross-functional group of people responsible for designing, building, and testing the product increments.
So they're the ones who are actually doing the work, collaborating closely to bring the product vision to life.
Exactly. And they're empowered to make decisions about how they'll do the work, fostering a sense of ownership and accountability.
Okay, those roles make sense. But what about the events? What are those key Scrum events that shape the flow of work?
There are 4 main Scrum events: the sprint planning meeting, the daily Scrum, the sprint review, and the sprint retrospective.
Okay, let's take them one at a time. The sprint planning meeting, if I recall correctly, is where the team decides what work to take on in the next sprint.
Exactly. It's like a collaborative brainstorming session where the product owner presents the highest priority items from the product backlog, and the development team selects the items they believe they can realistically complete within the sprint timeframe.
So they're setting achievable goals for the sprint, aligning their efforts with the product vision and the customer's priorities.
Precisely. And then we have the daily Scrum, which is a short time-boxed meeting held every day of the sprint. It's a chance for the team members to quickly check in with each other, share progress updates, identify any roadblocks, and collaborate on solutions.
So it's like a daily huddle, ensuring that everyone is on the same page, working together effectively, and addressing any issues that might be hindering progress.
Exactly. And then at the end of each sprint, we have the sprint review, where the development team demonstrates the working product increment to the stakeholders, gathering feedback and ensuring alignment with the product vision.
So it's a chance for the team to showcase their accomplishments, get valuable feedback from the stakeholders, and make any necessary adjustments to the product backlog based on that feedback.
Precisely. And finally, we have the sprint retrospective, which is a meeting held after the sprint review, where the team reflects on what went well during the sprint, what could be improved, and how to make the next sprint even more effective.
So it's a built-in mechanism for continuous improvement, encouraging the team to learn from their experiences and constantly strive for greater effectiveness.
Exactly. And these 4 Scrum events create a rhythmic flow of work, ensuring that the team is constantly moving forward, delivering value, gathering feedback, and adapting to change.
Okay, those events make sense. But what about the artifacts? You mentioned earlier that Scrum uses certain artifacts to manage the work and track progress. What are those artifacts?
The 3 main Scrum artifacts are the product backlog, the sprint backlog, and the increment. We've already touched on the product backlog, which is that prioritized list of features and requirements that the product owner manages. It's essentially the roadmap for the product's development, guiding the team's efforts and ensuring alignment with the customer's needs.
Right, so the product backlog is like the master to-do list for the product, constantly evolving and adapting as the team gains new insights and feedback.
Exactly. Then we have the sprint backlog, which is a subset of the product backlog, containing the specific tasks and user stories that the development team commits to completing during the current sprint. It's like the team's game plan for the sprint, outlining the specific actions they'll take to deliver the sprint goal.
So the sprint backlog is like the team's actionable to-do list for the sprint, a focused set of tasks that will move them closer to the product vision.
Precisely. And finally, we have the increment, which is the potentially shippable product increment that the development team delivers at the end of each sprint.
So it's a tangible, working piece of the product, a demonstrable outcome of the team's efforts during the sprint.
Exactly. And it needs to meet the definition of done, which is a set of criteria that defines what it means for a product increment to be considered complete and potentially releasable.
So it's not just about completing a bunch of tasks. It's about delivering a valuable, potentially shippable product increment that meets the defined quality standards.
Precisely. And these 3 Scrum artifacts, along with the roles and events we discussed earlier, create a powerful framework for managing and delivering complex projects in an agile way.
It's like a well-oiled machine, with all the parts working together seamlessly to deliver value to the customer, embrace change, and foster continuous improvement.
Exactly. And while Scrum does have its intricacies, it's fundamentally about empowering teams to work together effectively, embrace change, and deliver exceptional results.
And that's what really matters at the end of the day, right? Delivering value, exceeding expectations, and making a positive impact.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, I'm starting to see how Scrum brings a unique rhythm to project management. But what are some of those key ingredients that make this agile approach so effective, especially in those fast-paced environments where change is, well, the only constant?
One of the most powerful aspects of Agile, and Scrum in particular, is that focus on delivering value to the customer, quickly and consistently. So instead of waiting months or even years to deliver that final product,
you're constantly delivering working pieces of it throughout the process.
Exactly. Those working increments of the product. And this allows for those frequent feedback loops with the customer.
So you're not just guessing what they want, you're getting their input, their reactions all along the way.
Precisely. And that constant feedback, it not only ensures that the product is meeting their needs, it also reduces the risk of building something that completely misses the mark.
It's like having a built-in course correction. You can adjust your direction based on real-time feedback.
Exactly. And that adaptability is one of the key advantages of Agile. In today's world, things are changing so rapidly. Market trends, customer preferences, technology, the ability to adapt is crucial.
It's like navigating a winding mountain road. You need a nimble sports car that can handle those twists and turns, not a big, lumbering truck.
I like that analogy. And Agile, it's not just about responding to those external changes either. It embraces change internally too, encouraging teams to constantly reflect on their processes,
Identify areas for improvement, experiment with new ways of working.
Exactly. It's not just about delivering a product, it's about creating a culture of continuous learning and improvement within the team.
Constantly evolving, embracing change and feedback. That's what makes Agile so powerful. It's not a rigid set of rules. It's more like...
It's a mindset, a philosophy, a way of working that allows teams to really thrive in complexity. Okay, can we zoom back in on Scrum for a moment? We've talked about the roles, the events, the artifacts, but what are some of those core principles that make it so effective?
Good question.
Well, at its heart, Scrum is built on 3 pillars: transparency, inspection, and adaptation.
Okay, let's break those down. Transparency. I'm guessing that's about making sure everyone knows what's going on, right?
Absolutely. It's about open communication, shared goals, a visible workflow. Everyone on the team, even the stakeholders, they should all have access to the same information.
No hidden agendas, no surprises. Everyone's working from the same playbook.
Exactly. And that transparency is essential for the next pillar: inspection. If everything is out in the open, it's easier to inspect the process, to spot potential problems, to really track progress.
Like having a clear window into the inner workings of the project.
Right. And this leads us to the final pillar: adaptation. Once you've inspected the process, identified areas for improvement, you have to be willing to adapt, to make changes, experiment with new approaches.
So it's a constant cycle: transparency, inspection, adaptation.
A feedback loop that drives continuous improvement. And that's what sets Scrum apart for those traditional waterfall methods.
Waterfall is like following a recipe step by step, hoping it turns out like the picture in the cookbook.
And Scrum is more like improvisational cooking. You're tasting as you go, adjusting the seasonings.
Until you get that perfect flavor.
Exactly. Scrum embraces the reality that things change, requirements evolve. The best way to succeed is to be flexible and adaptable, and always learning along the way.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into project management. We've explored the fundamentals, the importance of planning, communication, scheduling, risk management. We've even journeyed into the world of Agile and Scrum.
It's been quite a journey indeed.
And we've learned that project management, it's more than just tools and techniques. It's a mindset, a collaborative journey towards achieving those shared goals. So whether you're building a skyscraper or planning a small team project, these principles can help you succeed.
Thanks for joining us.
And until next time, happy projecting!